Today I'll be replacing the rear passenger side shock on my 67 Camaro. I have all the contents of the new shock kit right here. Basically I'll go around and I'll show you what I've done so far. I've got the rear tire pulled and I placed it over there behind the rear tire so that I'm able to get a bit of a block there. Basically I've got the jack up on the axle about a foot so far, and I've also got a jack stand holding the rear end so that I'm able to control the height of the rear end by lowering and raising the jack, keeping the leaf spring there in a singular position. Replacing this shock right here, which is extremely old, extremely worn, and barely doing anything for me. Basically, for anybody who doesn't know what I'm looking at, it is this piece right here. Very large piece with the gas nipple there. Basically what we're going to do first is remove the top connection from the inside of the trunk so that we're able to get some slack on the shock and not have it pop down on us when we pull off the bottom connection. So what I'll do here is I'll show you where that is, which is in the trunk of my car. Some cars it might be on the top of the wheel well in the passenger compartment, but for me it's the easy to access spot in the trunk. So I will go ahead and loosen that nut right there first and pull it completely off, and we'll continue. As you can see, I removed the nut from the top of the shock assembly. I've got it right here. With the nut there was actually a washer as well as a rubber spacer. The spacer is going to act as a shock absorber for the top of the shock, so that it doesn't wiggle around and cause any dinging or clanking as we're driving down the road. So we've got the nut, which we got loosened, and then with that came the spacer as well as the rubber. So what you want to do is take those out as well so they don't fall into the back seat of the car or roll somewhere where you can't find them. We'll go down here to the underside of the car again. What I like to do next is I like to actually take the shock like I've done here already, and I like to pull it down with two hands and then bring it around to this side of the wheel well. The difference is that it allows you to access the other pieces that are left on the top of the shock. I've already done it because it's hard to do it with one camera in hand. So I take the top pieces off and I'm left with exactly the same pieces that were on the top of the shock that I now have in the trunk. So I'm going to put those down for now. We've got the shock loose on the top, and we're able to loosen the bottom the bottom bolt that's down here. As you can see, it should be right there. So we'll go ahead and grab our tools for that and get that off right away. As you can see, we've got the bolt pretty much pulled out of the bottom of the shock here. So I'm going to pull the bolt out, and normally the shock would fall, but I've got it sitting, and so it won't because I knew I was going to do this. Basically, I'm going to pull the shock completely out, and we can either discard it, or if you have some kind of collector shock of some kind, you could eBay it. But either way, we're going to continue over to the new shock now. I'm going to give a little explanation here of what's going to happen. We have the new shock, of course, as well as we have the new rubbers, as well as the washers, and of course we have the old ones and the nut that's going to go on the top of the threads here. So basically on this car, the shock assembly didn't work as well on the other side as I'd expected. The new style rubber and washer don't fit through the body of the car properly, so it's not as easy to do it the way you're supposed to do it, which is a bit annoying for me. So what I'm going to actually do is end up using the old ones, and I'm just going to do that so I don't get a bunch of comments saying, oh, why did you use the old ones when you had those new ones sitting right there? So I'm going to, because it's easier for me to assemble it, and because the old ones are in near exact identical shape to the new ones. So I'm going to just continue with that. Now, I would recommend anybody that has a newer car or that is safety conscious and doesn't want to take the risk, I would recommend that you go ahead and continue using the two new ones that come with the car. But I am going to set them aside and go from there. So we're left the new pieces, and we're going to go ahead and put the shock on the car just like the old one was. It may require some kind of squeezing to get in there. Mine slid in pretty good. So we'll go ahead and continue by putting the bolt back into the shock, and we're going to tighten it up from there. Alright, so we've got that tightened, and they're really good. Basically we pull back, and we've got the shock just basically sitting against the frame of the car right now. What we're going to do is we're going to take the original, in this case your new spacer and washer, and then put it over the shaft of the shock. You want to have the metal washer down first, and then you want to go ahead and we're going to cut this plastic retaining strap. Now, the retaining strap does not have a serious amount of pressure, as the shock is not designed to just explode upwards and take your hand off. So you're actually going to cut this, and then what you're going to do is you're going to guide the shaft up in through the hole that's in the body of your car. So in this case, I'd be taking this shock and I'd be aiming it so that when the shock slowly rises to the hole, it actually, the end of the shaft goes through the hole so that we can see the top of the threads in the trunk or in your wheel or wherever it may be. So let's go ahead. As you can see, I've got the strap cut and the shock raised as high as it's going to go. Now I've got the car jack too high, so what's happened here is you can see between the rubber there and the bottom of the trunk there's actually a gap where you can still see the shaft, and that's basically right in there and there. So I've got a good 1.5 inches or so there. So basically the car is up about 1.5 inches or more too high. So what I need to do is I need to drop the jack so that we can see no gap there. I'll just show you here. I've actually got it in the trunk, like I said. You can see the top of the blue shock there sticking through the trunk, but it's just not enough to get a good and tight enough grasp on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lower the car a little bit onto the jack. Now what that does, of course, is it removes the gap and allows it to stick up higher. Now you can take a look at that now. We've got a considerably large amount of the shock sticking up, and that will allow us to tighten down our washer and rubber on there. So if we take a look again, there should be near zero gap. It should be compressed right up against the bottom of the car, and we can go ahead from there now, and we can add the original pieces, or in this case the new pieces, onto the shock there. So we're going to go ahead and put, in this case, rubber first, and then the metal washer, and then take our brand new nut and we're going to stick them on top as well. So we're going to go ahead now, of course, and tighten that down as good as we can without stripping the bolt. So let's go ahead and do that. As you can see here, we've got the nut fully fastened down. You should probably notice that when you're tightening this down, that the rubber spacer in there is actually going to expand and sort of probably lip out over the washer a little bit. That'll be regardless if you use the old ones or the new ones. Like I said, always use the new ones, don't use the old ones. So we've got this done here. We've got the car still pretty low on the jack stand. So what we're going to want to do now is we're going to pull the jack stand out by jacking the car back up, taking the jack stand out, putting the tire back on, and going ahead from there and giving her a test ride. So go ahead from here and make sure everything's tight, pull everything from underneath the car, and go from there. Have a good time.